because the problem is like you don't know like what piece they studied, and you're not studying the entire thing. And also the image of it is bizarre, because the image of it, you really only see Jesus when it's a negative of it. And they don't know how that image was put on there.
In Psalm 45, King David described Jesus as the most beautiful of the sons of men. And humanity has believed that portrait for 2,000 years. But what if it was all just a fabricated portrait? There is an ancient Roman letter sent directly to Emperor Caesar by the official Lentulus. In the letter, he describes Jesus' appearance in meticulous detail. Guess what? It's a Jesus never imagined by humanity. If this letter is real, what was his true appearance? And what was the purpose of the European world deliberately constructing a completely different image for centuries? Let's uncover Lentulus's letter and discover the truth that might make you reconsider everything. The impossible choice. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. For thousands of years, whenever people picture the face of Jesus, a single image emerges almost instinctively. A face so beautiful it borders on perfection. A tall man, refined features, long flowing hair in the style of Europe. This image did not appear by chance. It has been fixed into our collective memory through countless sculptures in ancient European churches, paintings displayed in the world's most prestigious museums, and faded frescoes that still shimmer beneath the dust of time. All of them depict the same face, noble, captivating, instantly recognizable as the Savior. Yet this ideal image did not arise on its own. One of its most important foundations lies in a mysterious and widely known document, the Letter of Lentulus. According to records circulating since the 15th century, Publius Lentulus was said to be a Roman official, possibly a predecessor of Pontius Pilate in Judea. The letter is believed to have been an official report sent to the Roman Senate and to Caesar, describing a figure who was causing unrest in a distant land. Its description is so precise that it leaves readers in awe. The man is of moderate height, yet carries an air of authority that inspires both reverence and affection. His hair is a rich chestnut color, smooth and shining as it falls to his shoulders, parted in the middle in the manner of the Nazarenes. His forehead is broad and clear, like polished glass. His face bears no wrinkle or blemish, touched only by a natural glow. His eyes, gray with hints of blue, shine with an unusual sharpness. The letter concludes with a declaration that sounds almost divine in its praise. This is the most beautiful man among all beings. It is exactly what Western culture has long desired. An official Roman endorsement, as if a bureaucratic seal confirming that inner divinity is perfectly reflected in outward beauty. It feels convincing, almost too convincing, something people want to believe. And then, the Bible overturns everything. In Isaiah chapter 53, a passage widely recognized by Christian theologians as the clearest prophecy of the Messiah, a completely different portrait is revealed. He has no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected by mankind. This is not a minor contradiction. These are two images that cancel each other out entirely. On one side stands a man of striking beauty, someone who commands attention wherever he goes. On the other, a man entirely ordinary, even burdened, easily lost in the crowd and subject to scorn. These two images cannot coexist within the same person at the same moment in history. To accept one is to reject the other. So why does a single historical figure carry two radically opposing descriptions? And more importantly, the images of Jesus we continue to admire today, what foundation are they truly built upon? The face within a vision. To trace the true origin of this familiar image, we do not need to excavate ruins or decipher ancient manuscripts. Instead, we travel to a small room in Płock, Poland, in the year 1931. A nun named Faustina Kowalska is deep in prayer when a powerful vision overtakes her. A figure appears vividly before her eyes. The right hand is raised in blessing. The left rests gently upon the chest. From that point, two radiant beams of red and white light pour forth like a sacred stream. Then comes a clear command: find an artist and have him paint exactly what you see. Faustina obeys. The painter Eugene Kazimirovsky is summoned and works under her detailed guidance. Slowly, the image takes form. A slender face, deep, compassionate eyes, long flowing hair, and beard. This becomes the Divine Mercy image, later venerated by millions around the world. Yet the most significant moment does not come when the painting is completed. It comes when Faustina looks at it. She does not rejoice. She weeps, not with joy, but with profound disappointment. Her voice trembles with sorrow. Who could ever paint him as beautiful as he truly is? Those words cut sharply through any illusion of realism. And then she adds something even more striking. The greatness of this image does not lie in the beauty of its colors or brush strokes. Its greatness lies in my grace. With that statement, all physical meaning is stripped away. The painting becomes merely a vessel, a bridge through which divine grace is conveyed, not a documentary portrait. His true beauty is beyond what human eyes can perceive or human hands can capture. If even one of the most revered images of modern times openly acknowledges its own limitations, and if its origin lies entirely in an inner spiritual experience, then what of the other images we continue to venerate? Were they born from the same process? A portrait at 2 in the morning. Just a few years before the Divine Mercy image emerged in Europe, a similar event took place in Chicago, giving rise to what may be the most widely reproduced religious portrait of the 20th century. The painting is known as Head of Christ, created by commercial illustrator Warner Salmon. The circumstances of its creation offer a revealing glimpse into how symbolic images enter cultural consciousness. In January of 1924, Salmon faced a looming deadline for a magazine cover. He needed to produce a portrait, yet found himself completely blocked. According to his own account, at 2 in the morning, the image suddenly appeared in his mind like a flash of light. Unlike a process grounded in research or modeled observation, this vision arrived fully formed, vivid, and almost overwhelming in its urgency. He immediately sketched it in charcoal. Salmon's portrait depicts a man in profile, his gaze lifted slightly upward, as if in contemplation or directed toward a higher power. His features are soft, illuminated by light that creates a natural halo effect. Most striking, however, is the unmistakable morphology of the figure. He bears the characteristics of Northern European or Anglo-Saxon heritage: light skin, smooth brown blonde hair, and a refined jawline. The sketch was later rendered in oil in 1940 and became a cultural phenomenon. During the Second World War, millions of small reproductions were printed and distributed to American soldiers heading into battle. It appeared in schools, hospitals, libraries, and homes across the country. For many generations in the West, it became the default face of the Savior. The rise of Salmon's image reinforces a crucial pattern of perception. The most widely accepted modern depictions, the faces that shape the imagination of hundreds of millions, have no connection to archaeological evidence. They are not reconstructions based on the anthropological features of the first-century Middle East. Instead, they emerge from visions, dreams, and moments of personal revelation experienced by individuals separated from the original events by thousands of years and vast distances. When physical reality is entirely replaced by inner experience, the observer is compelled to question the foundation of religious art itself. If 20th century works are born from personal visions, then what sources did the great masters of the Renaissance rely upon when they painted the face of the Savior with such confidence and precision? The God of Florence. To test how objective the great classical masters truly were in reconstructing historical figures, Leonardo da Vinci's Salvator Mundi, or Savior of the World, offers an ideal case study. Sold at auction in 2017 for a record-breaking price, the painting stands as a summit of Renaissance art. Yet a close examination of its details reveals a far more complex process of visual construction. Da Vinci did not paint a poor carpenter from 1st century Galilee. The figure in Salvator Mundi is dressed in a deep blue robe adorned with delicate golden embroidery, a style entirely foreign to the ancient Near East, yet instantly familiar to the aristocratic world of 15th century Florence and Milan. His right hand is raised with 2 fingers crossed in the traditional gesture of blessing used by the Western Church. His left hand supports a crystal orb of eternity. That crystal orb is not a random physical detail. In Renaissance thought, it represented the star-filled cosmos, the perfection of the celestial spheres, according to the astronomy of the age. It symbolized absolute dominion over the universe itself. Its presence transforms the figure in the painting from a living man rooted in a specific historical setting into something vast and cosmic, a divine being presiding over the order of nature. The face is rendered with Da Vinci's signature sfumato, softening every boundary and creating a beauty that feels almost beyond gender, elusive and untethered from ordinary human biology. This appearance aligns completely with the standards of beauty described in the letter of Lentulus. It embodies the very perfection Renaissance Neoplatonic philosophy longed for, the belief that outward beauty reveals inner goodness and divinity. What Salvator Mundi shows us is this: even a mind as devoted to empirical observation as Da Vinci's was not trying to uncover historical truth here. The painting is not an anthropological reconstruction. It is a cultural projection. Da Vinci took the Renaissance ideal of the perfect man, fused it with European cosmological ideas, and laid them over an Eastern historical figure. At this point, the truth begins to emerge. The entire current of Western art, from the visionary 20th century images of Salmon and Faustina to the Renaissance masterpieces of Da Vinci, was built on the same mechanism: interpretation and cultural projection. Not one of these works truly attempts to reflect the physical reality of the 1st century. The artistic and intellectual veil is so dense that it obscures almost every effort to recover the real face behind it. Once art and vision have revealed themselves as instruments of imagination rather than records of history, only one path remains. That cultural shell must be stripped away. We must return to the oldest texts, to accounts that describe concrete events and direct human behavior, and ask how a living man of flesh and blood actually moved through the physical world around him. The man in the garden. Setting aside later theology and paintings created centuries after the fact, one physical event described in detail in the Gospels offers perhaps the clearest clue to this man's real appearance. It unfolds at night, in an olive grove called Gethsemane, at the foot of the Mount of Olives, just outside Jerusalem. According to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 26, the setting is a carefully planned arrest. A large group of armed men carrying swords and clubs is sent by the authorities to carry out the seizure. The garden is dark, lit only by torchlight. There, a small group of men stands together, the central figure, and the 11 disciples beside him. For the arresting force, this is a purely practical problem. In the darkness, how do they identify the right man in a crowd? The answer is recorded in the text itself. An insider, Judas Iscariot had arranged a signal in advance. "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him." Judas then steps forward, greets him, and uses that kiss as the sign for the soldiers to move in. This episode is usually examined as a moral drama of betrayal. But from the perspective of physical appearance and human behavior, it becomes devastating evidence against nearly every later artistic image. Consider the logic. Why would a kiss, a physical act at very close range, be necessary at all? If this man truly possessed commanding height, flowing chestnut hair, brilliant gray-blue eyes, and the astonishing beauty described in the letter of Lentulus, the soldiers would have recognized him from a distance by torchlight. If he radiated an unmistakable aura that set him apart from the carpenters and fishermen around him, then Judas's signal would have been completely unnecessary. The very need for a secret physical sign from someone within the group proves an undeniable physical reality. In that setting, the central figure looked entirely like the other 11 Galilean men. He had no distinctive marker of height, clothing, hairstyle, or facial structure that would allow Roman soldiers or temple guards to single him out by sight alone. This behavioral detail aligns perfectly with the much earlier prophecy in Isaiah. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should notice. The strongest internal evidence within the source texts themselves points to the existence of an ordinary man, one who blended completely into the crowd of working people in the 1st century Near East. On one side stand 17 centuries of art, celebrating a figure of extraordinary beauty, majesty, and radiance. On the other stands a practical detail from the original texts, recorded by those closest to the event, confirming a man so ordinary he could not be identified among a group of ordinary men. These two physical realities cannot exist together. So why did history choose to bury the second one? The war between two ideas. The disappearance of the image of an ordinary, unrecognizable man was not the result of time slowly wearing memory away. It was the outcome of a vast ideological and cultural struggle in which the physical image of a historical figure was turned into a political weapon. For its first 300 years, Christianity was a faith of the oppressed, practiced in secret, and often persecuted by the Roman Empire. Then came a decisive turning point. In the early 4th century, the Roman Emperor Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, ending the persecutions and gradually elevating Christianity into the official religion of the empire. The move from dark catacombs into imperial palaces demanded an equally dramatic change in symbolism. The Roman Empire, shaped by a tradition of worshipping mighty gods who ruled the heavens and thunder, such as Jupiter or Zeus in Greek mythology, could not easily embrace a deity who looked like an ordinary Jewish carpenter and had been publicly executed by their own legal system in the humiliation of crucifixion. The image of a man who vanished into the crowd in Gethsemane was useless to a structure of power that needed to govern millions. A great empire required a great savior. The theology of ordinariness, in which supreme power hid itself beneath weakness and invisibility, as Isaiah suggests, did not fit the atmosphere of the imperial court. In its place arose an aesthetic of divinity. Appearance had to reflect power. This was the fertile ground in which ideas like the letter of Lentulus could take root. Its authenticity no longer mattered. Whether it was a lost original text or a sophisticated later forgery, its content answered the psychological and political needs of its age with uncanny precision. To describe Jesus as majestic, flawless in face, and powerful in gaze was not an attempt to restore history. It was an attempt to align the new Christian deity with the familiar divine archetypes of Roman and Greek power. The exchange was complete. The savior of the poor in Galilee was visually erased and replaced by the image of a cosmic emperor, clothed in purple, crowned with a solemn beard, seated upon a throne of judgment. Western art did not paint the portrait of a man. It painted the portrait of Western power itself. This transformation succeeded so completely that it became the default truth in the imagination of the world. And yet, if the majestic king was only a cultural mask placed upon him centuries later in service of Roman emperors, then how did the earliest generations of Christians, those who lived in the shadows and stood closest in time to the original events, imagine the face of their spiritual leader before that transformation took hold? The ghost in the catacombs. To search for the earliest image, before imperial intervention reshaped everything, archaeologists must descend beneath the city of Rome into the vast network of catacombs stretching for miles. This was where Christians of the 2nd and 3rd centuries buried their dead and carried out their rites in secrecy. And on those porous, tough walls, the earliest known visual images of the Savior were discovered. Yet what archaeologists found dealt a powerful blow to both of the earlier systems of belief. It was neither the majestic, long-bearded emperor of Byzantine art after the 4th century, nor the worn and unremarkable figure suggested by the prophecy of Isaiah. The most common image found in the catacombs is a motif known as the Good Shepherd. In these frescoes, the figure is a youthful man, completely beardless, with short and gently curled hair. He wears a short tunic that falls to the knees, the typical clothing of Roman laborers, with a sheep draped across his shoulders as he stands among the flock. His posture, bearing, and bodily proportions all follow the strict principles of classical Roman art. The appearance of this image creates a rupture in perception. Why would the earliest Christians depict Jesus as a Roman youth, with none of the visible features associated with a Jewish man of the ancient Near East? The answer lies in the function of art during an age of persecution. Catacomb art was not portraiture. It was camouflage. It was survival. The image of the shepherd carrying a sheep was not an original invention. It was directly borrowed from familiar pagan symbols in Roman culture, especially from figures such as Apollo or Orpheus, who were also associated with shepherd imagery or with guiding souls away from death. By using visual archetypes already accepted within the dominant culture, early Christians created a kind of code. A Roman soldier on patrol, glancing at the image, would see nothing more than an ordinary pastoral scene, or perhaps an image of Apollo. Only those initiated into the Christian community would understand the hidden meaning beneath it. The shepherd carrying a redeemed soul upon his shoulders. This archaeological evidence reveals a harsh truth. There was never any continuous historical visual tradition preserving the real appearance of Jesus. The generation closest to the events had to encode his image in Roman symbols simply to survive. Later generations magnified him into the likeness of Greek-style emperors in order to rule. Every effort to depict him in the first 3 centuries was functional, not historical. And once the illusion of a continuous visual lineage collapses, once it becomes clear that every image is only a borrowed sign, a physical object suddenly appears in the historical record carrying a deeply unsettling optical clue, pushing every attempt at interpretation back into chaos. The cloth of controversy. In 1354, a physical relic appeared in Europe known as the Shroud of Turin. It is a linen cloth about 4.4 meters long, and on its surface lies a complex optical phenomenon. Faint straw yellow markings form the front and back impression of a man who appears to have suffered physical injuries consistent with the description of crucifixion. What gives the Shroud of Turin its enduring force in this debate is not merely the story of its transmission through history, but the physical structure of the image itself. In 1898, when the cloth was photographed for the first time, it was discovered that the faint image visible to the naked eye was in fact a perfect photographic negative. Even more remarkable, 20th century analysis suggested that the discoloration exists only on the outermost surface of the individual linen fibers, with a depth of only a few micrometers. There is no evidence of pigment, paint, brushwork, or any chemical binding substance that could account for the formation of the entire image. It also appears to contain encoded three-dimensional information, allowing the structure of the face and body to be reconstructed. The morphology of the man on the shroud lies at the center of this disturbance in perception. The image on the cloth shows a tall man, somewhere between roughly 1.70 and 88 meters in height, with a well-proportioned body, a full beard, and long hair falling to the shoulders, parted in the middle. The appearance revealed in the negative of this linen cloth aligns in a strange and unsettling way with the iconic images of Byzantine art and with the aesthetic description found in the letter of Lentulus. It stands in total contrast to the beardless youth of the Roman catacombs, and it seems to conflict with the unremarkable ordinariness implied by the scene in the Garden of Gethsemane. This object creates a deadlock. If the Shroud of Turin is an elaborate medieval forgery, then how could a 14th century artist produce a three-dimensional negative image without using ordinary painting materials, surpassing the technical limits of the time? Yet if the physical phenomenon on the cloth is the result of some unknown burst of energy directly linked to the historical figure, then why does it seem to display a face so perfectly aligned with royal Western artistic conventions that would only be developed centuries later? The Shroud of Turin does not resolve the crisis of perception. It deepens it. It draws the observer into a space where every attempt to prove or disprove runs into physical or logical barriers that seem impossible to overcome. And through all the inner visions, the coded paintings, the efforts to reshape power through image, and the relics with still unexplained optical structures, the one thing truly absent, the greatest silence in the entire story, lies at its very beginning. The erased face. The greatest absence, and perhaps the most deliberate one, in the entire debate over the image of this central historical figure does not lie in the archaeological remains. It lies within the foundational texts themselves. The authors of the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, along with Paul, the most prolific letter writer of the New Testament, used tens of thousands of words to record sermons, miracles, theological debates, and the final moments of this man's life in extraordinary detail. They even preserved details as small as the fact that he wrote something in the sand, or the way he broke bread. And yet, in that entire body of ancient writing, not a single line, not a single word describes the color of his eyes, the length of his hair, the structure of his face, or his height. In the ancient world, where physical appearance was often carefully recorded to affirm lineage and authority, as in descriptions of King David's beauty or the strength of Roman rulers, this silence is deafening. It cannot be an accidental omission. It is a deliberate break in transmission. The original authors removed the physical body entirely from the text, perhaps to prevent devotion from fastening itself to outward form, or to insist that the essence of the message did not lie in biological appearance. But human history and culture cannot tolerate an invisible void for long. Because the original texts remained intentionally silent, later cultures were given complete freedom to invent, construct, and shape a face that reflected themselves. In 2001, a project using modern forensic anthropology based on data from the skulls of first-century Jewish men in Judea produced a reconstruction. It showed the face of a man with dark olive skin, short black curly hair, cut in accordance with the customs of the time, a broad face, a short beard, and an average height of about 1.66 meters. The face of a typical craftsman from the Middle East, a face that would disappear completely into the crowd in the Garden of Gethsemane. This forensic face is not an exact portrait of Jesus, but it represents the biological, geographical, and historical reality that was systematically stripped away and erased. Western culture could not kneel before the image of a dark-skinned foreign laborer, so it produced the letter of Lentulus. It painted gods across the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. It created gentle eyes and shining blonde hair in the portraits of the 20th century. The majestic and beautiful image admired by billions today is not a historical truth preserved through time. It is a vast monument to the power of cultural manipulation, proof that an empire can even transform the face of the god it worships in order to ensure that God wears its own features. History did not simply lose this man's true appearance. History deliberately replaced it.